Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. I just very rudely interrupted Danica, who was mid-thought, because I wanted her to share it with you, and so we're jumping in. Who knows if she's even going to remember it now, because I literally put my hand to the camera and said, stop it. But today we are talking about suffering better, or learning to be uncomfortable. And I feel like most people, especially this time of year, refuse to accept that at all. And so we're going to dive into why it can help build character and a whole lot of other good stuff. And so Danica, ready to go with that thought.
Ready to go. I was saying how it doesn't have to be physical suffering, although a lot of the progress that we make does come through a degree of physical suffering, but it can also be mental and emotionally suffering, I guess, or challenging, right? There are many times, what I was going to say is there are many times throughout my day that I am emotionally triggered, and internally I might be suffering a degree because I can't express those emotions the way that they want to come out. So I have to tactfully kind of put them down, navigate it a little bit better, and then come out with something that's a little more appropriate to express. And that is a degree of suffering, if you could say, or discomfort. It's very uncomfortable sometimes for me to not emotionally react in a heightened way. But what I wanted to say with that is it allows me to see a skill set that is really amazing, right? To be able to practice that and say, oh, wow, I can be in the face of something that really triggers me, but I know how to emotionally regulate myself so I can navigate that triggering moment in a more effective way. And if people started to see suffering as an opportunity to grow and an opportunity to strengthen something, instead of this thing that, oh, but it's too uncomfortable. Oh, having uncomfortable conversations are my jam. I like that because it pushes me outside of my comfort zone. And 9 times out of 10, something good comes out of it. So that's what I was saying.
I was gonna say, you definitely, you can just, react however you want to react.
Yeah, you can fuck around and find out.
Totally. But it's is the risk worth the reward?
Exactly.
And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is yes. It was worth it to yell at that person. Just to be mean.
Sometimes, but then I also find I could give so many instances where, I think most of our listeners can understand it's within that discomfort or uncomfortable state that you're going to find the progress being made, right? Otherwise, you're not pushing yourself. You're not pushing your limits, right? But when it comes to even, I would say challenging yourself around social environments or being able to feel uncomfortable in a social setting, whether it's the food choices that you make, or I just had one the other day where I was in a group setting. I didn't want to have an alcoholic beverage. It just wasn't for me at that time. Everyone else had it. And I could have I felt uncomfortable. There was a certain discomfort that I felt, but I was no, I'm going to do what feels best for me in this moment and not appease everyone else or entertain everybody's pressure that they're oh, come on. Of course it was uncomfortable, but that was okay. It didn't mean that just because it was uncomfortable, I needed to go right into comfort immediately.
So I think it's interesting because those uncomfortable, difficult, challenging situations, I think it's important to recognize they don't always it doesn't mean that you're going to get good change or that you're going to grow from it, but it's an opportunity for that.
Right.
I think having that difference in mindset is important because when you see uncomfortable situations as an opportunity to grow or an opportunity to improve or to change, you don't shirk them off the same. As I think a lot of individuals, they're almost afraid, like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be put in that situation. I don't want to be put in that. And for some people, like, hey, say you're a recovering alcoholic and you know that that situation is coming. Cool. Maybe you shouldn't be put in that situation right now. Maybe you're not ready for that. Great. But at some point, there's probably going to be a situation where you need to be able to prove to yourself, hey, I can say no to this. Like I can have, one person be like, hey, you want to drink? And be like, no, thanks. 7 years or 5 years or whatever it is, right?
Two
Um,
weeks, like even if it's brand new, you don't have to have
yeah.
it. Yeah. I think like a lot of it comes down to building up that day-to-day stuff, right? So that it isn't something where it's like, okay, well, I'm a brand new, like I've recognized I have an alcohol problem and now I'm going to a Christmas party where everyone's going to have drinks. Yeah, maybe you don't have to force yourself to be there, right? Because that's going into an immediate, this is going to be so fucking hard, like situation, and you can build into those. But it makes me think about like, this has stuck with me like forever. So joining the Navy, right? You go to boot camp and all of that kind of stuff. Everyone's screaming at you all the time and like life changes pretty fast. And one of the things like, well, that I loved boot camp for is it taught me when to shut up. Um, which now maybe I'm lazier about. But that you'd have to stand there for inspection at attention. And if your nose itches and you scratch it, you have now fucked your entire division of 80 people and everyone's in trouble because you scratched your nose. And it's one of those things where like being able to stand there while you have like a bug crawling on you and you can see it, but you cannot like swat it away or you can't squash your nose. And it sounds really silly, like something that small, but even just little things like that, it like that can get you to a place where like you can do things that are uncomfortable a little bit more. So like today I was saying it's snowing outside. I like to watch the snow from inside my house. I have no desire to be in it and I don't like to be cold. And so as soon as my husband and I saw snow this morning, he was like, get out there, like go run, because he knows that when I come home from those, I feel incredible, but making myself do it, I don't want to. And so I went out and ran for an hour today. And I push my clients all the time where they'll be like, well, it's winter. And so I can't do my 10-minute walk at night anymore. And I'm like, why? Like, just because you just don't want to? Well, like you also listed off in your check-in about how you don't want to feel fluffy or how you don't want to feel bad digestion and things like that. But we're giving up on this one thing because now it's a little chilly outside and it's dark, but like you can still go get it done. And so that's where like I'll push my clients to choose something that's like uncomfortable to them or that they don't like and do that for like 10 minutes a day because it helps you get to a place where you have more confidence and more experience accepting the discomfort. You don't have to love it, but you get comfortable with it and accept it.
Yeah. This is also, I think it's said more in maybe, I'm trying to think, where did I hear it mostly? Like get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it was definitely during my prep years, like just get comfortable, like accept that and be okay with it. But it applies to like so many things. And I also think that today, like nowadays, unfortunately, everyone seeks out like just comfort and ease and like what's easier to do, to include myself. Like it's very easy to order something on Amazon than it is to like go
Hey,
find.
hey now.
I'm just saying it is, right? The convenience of life, like nowadays, is it's pretty obnoxious. But also we're influenced in certain ways too, right? So to check yourself and say it's okay, like I can step outside of the comfort zone a little bit and still get what I need done without just like allowing myself, because let's be honest, nobody really, I think that the thing that changed was probably COVID pushed it even more, because then technology kind of exploded with like, oh my gosh, we can start to create different things. Like you don't even have to leave your house. Like you can literally stay in your house all the time now and do anything, which is wild to me, like wild that we can do this. And everything comes right to your door, which is even more crazy. But another thing I was going to say is it hasn't just started. I think it's an amplified that people just want to feel comfortable. That isn't working out well for us, by the way, as like a whole in the United States. But also, I think that people don't challenge each other enough to be uncomfortable. When I was fitness director in Vermont, there was a women's room and it was solely for women. And we needed to expand on our space because we were bringing in a Genevics program, which worked with medical professionals, and we were able to collaborate with insurance companies. And it was an amazing program that we wanted to use that space for. And I got so much pushback because I was like, get rid of the women's room. The women can go in the gym. Like the gym, there's this huge space with all the equipment. We don't need this little kind of nook where only women can go to. If they feel uncomfortable, bring them to me. Like I will absolutely introduce them to the same equipment that's on the floor as is in the women's room. But the pushback that I got because of the discomfort that it brought for so many people, I was like astonished by it because I think also during that point I was prepping. So I was like, get uncomfortable. But it was wild to me that people didn't just see it as an opportunity of like, okay, this might be a little uncomfortable, but like I'm not alone in this and I can like handle this discomfort. It's going to be okay.
So I think the whole conversation is a good kind of way to show things because it's like we talk about resistance training and exercise, and it helps you with things like pain tolerance, right? Your sensation to pain is deadened, so you're not as sensitive to it. So when we get into this sort of, I think, habit of comfort, of dopamine hits, of always feeling good, what ends up happening is we become so sensitized to anything that goes against that. I think that's what we see nowadays. And I think for me, what I see is a really, really big problem. Because you have some people out there that have, they've had tough lives, they've had a lot of discomfort, whatever. They don't have that same viewpoint. But now for them to share their viewpoints with somebody who has lived a very comfortable life, that person has a very hard time being able to see that. And I think when you challenge yourself in those discomforting situations, those difficult situations, it teaches you to be more hardened or desensitized to that. So instead of having that immediate emotional response like you were talking about earlier, which good, bad, whatever, it definitely never helps us understand anyone else's perspective or situation. Not once in my life have I been super emotional and has it done me any good in understanding somebody else. And so now we have this hypersensitization of everybody around topics that probably don't need to be, or things that wouldn't be other places. Like I've been to shows in Europe where they have mixed gender tanning and stuff. Guess what? It's not a big deal for anybody over there. It's socially, it's just what they're used to. So that would be a very uncomfortable situation for most people here. For them, completely normal, different social status and stuff. But like, if we're so sensitized to that, how are we supposed to find a middle ground of how do we make progress? How do we make things better? And how do we overall feel more fulfilled? Because I think there's also this aspect of challenge that has a huge piece of fulfillment in terms of like human psyche. And if we never overcome anything, then how do we feel like we've had a fulfilling life? How do we feel like we've accomplished goals or done something that has some kind of meaning or positive impact that will hopefully last after we're gone? And so I think it just opens up this entire thing. Like, I know my parents wanted me to have an easier life than they had, but I can't have too easy of a life.
I think about that all the time while I'm like out on like in my training runs and stuff like that. That's something that I almost like, it'll come up at the hard parts all the time. It's like, uh, to me, living a life that's unchallenged would be like living a life unlived for me at this point. Like if I just said like, well, this is Christina and this is what I do and I don't do anymore. And I didn't try to extend myself by, doing something different with work or having conversations am nervous about having or doing like whatever it is, good doing harder races, doing different kinds of workouts, whatever. And like what happened with me was I feel like, honestly, I mean, I spent so much of like my childhood and like younger years and stuff wanting to avoid that kind of stuff, like wanting to just have things be chill and easy. And it took, I mean, it's like the Navy did wonders for me when it comes to resiliency and like teaching me that stuff, because it was that big, scary experience that then was like, oh, well, you did this really terrifying thing across so many different parts. I left home. I hated meeting new people. I left to somewhere I didn't know a single fucking soul, and everybody was yelling at me all the time. I had to work out for work and have all of that kind of stuff related. I have toddlers trying to break into my office right now. So, but had all of these different things going on. And then from there, it kind of became like that's my thing now. Like, I want to find the next thing that's a little bit harder. I want to do the thing I don't know how to do yet, or I want to learn the thing I haven't learned about yet, because why the fuck not? Like, I would be so disappointed in myself if I just was like, well, these are the things I know and that I'm willing to understand and learn, and I don't want to challenge that anymore. Like, how boring would that be to not try and continue to push that envelope? And not everybody is going to get as excited about those kinds of things. And that's where I feel like it's nice to try and find like digestible little ways to challenge people with that stuff. Whether it is, you know, maybe it's somebody who's been sober for a very long time and they've noticed that their social life has gone down because of it and they miss that. Well, then it might be like, okay, well, the next step is we go out with, you know, a group of people that you're on like the more comfortable end of stuff with it. And maybe like they understand where you're coming from, and we start there. And then we expand out to like the work social party or something. And it goes to the same thing with foods, right? Like we've all worked with people who cling to their diets or their, you know, list of 10 foods that they're allowed to eat or whatever. And then this time of year can be utterly terrifying because they're getting thrown into situations that they don't have control over, or that they are very excited to just completely release control over. And then it goes the opposite way. And they're just like, well, fuck it for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I think having the experience of discomfort and then them being able to overcome it and recognizing what that feels like, that feeling of like empowerment and that feeling, that increase of self-confidence, and then you're building skill sets. I think that is something that when you can like go back to it and you can realize like, oh, actually that feeling of discomfort, it was a positive thing because this is what I was able to overcome and this is what I achieved from it. And maybe that's why for you, it helps you to realize that any form of discomfort is actually kind of a pleasurable thing, because you know through discomfort you have in the past succeeded. And being able to, some of the things that I do with my mindset clients, if I know that, I mean, most of them are coming to me because they have a fear of the unknown, or they're stuck in control, or an all or nothing, or they are not challenging themselves. So I always try to go back, like, tell me an experience that you had growing up or through your childhood, through like your adolescent years, that you're really proud of, like something that you were able to overcome, and talk to me about that. And what did that feel like? What did it look like? How did you do that? And then remind them that, like, yeah, that was you. Like, that's still you. And that feeling that you had still exists, can still come up inside of you. So let's try to bring that out, because that was pretty awesome that you were able to overcome that. And then feel like through that discomfort, you found comfort. And on top of that, you gained so many other things like self-confidence, ability to trust yourself. You felt empowered. You felt invigorated by it. You wanted to progress a little bit more. So being able to kind of find something, because I feel like unless you've never been through a challenge in your life, then what are you doing? like you said, okay, cool. So say somebody comes to us and says, but I've never had any challenges in my life. Well, are you fulfilled then? Is there anything, do you feel completely fulfilled in your life? Every basic human need is met, and every psychological need is met too. If so, that's amazing. But I find that hard to believe for many. There's probably something that they want to overcome or they want to be able to do, and that's going to come through feeling a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think it's super important, especially if you're trying to push into this idea, like in the beginning, that you're going back to what Christina said earlier, taking digestible bites, making realistic decisions in terms of, all right, this seems like something I could probably handle. This is maybe a good start. And maybe it's not where I want to be at the end. Maybe my goal is something big, but I'm gonna make that first step and start putting myself out there with something, right? Because if you set yourself up on the other end of the spectrum, I think it really messes you up because if you're, um, Christina's child has a Sharpie. But if you're setting yourself on the other side of that and saying, okay, I'm going to make these really huge, giant goals, and every time I go to achieve that, I fail miserably. It's very easy to become a victim with that behavior. And then that kind of, I feel like it just pushes people into more of the I'm not going to take the chance. I'm not going to put myself into that position. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z. Even though, yes, sure, it sounds like it would be great if I could do it. It sounds exciting. I know I would feel fulfilled if I could manage it, but I'm not going to take that risk anymore. And so I do think you have to be wise in terms of how you're choosing what you're going after, what situations you're putting yourself in, so that you're not, encouraging putting yourself into a place where you're now a victim in terms of that situation, even though we were the ones that chose it.
Yeah. Like the exposure therapy is such a beautiful thing, and it's very, very small incremental parts. Like it's not a huge thing, and it's knowing where you stand and the degree to which you are fearing the discomfort or fearing the unknown or that specific situation too. And having people start off small, I think we've said this before, but those small different tweaks or pivots or like changes is what can bring on bigger progress down the road. It kind of builds up your confidence down the road. So even if you gave I know we always talk about like fitness, but if I can slide in like emotional pieces too. So I have a client who keeps a bunch of guards up. Like her walls are so big and so high and so strong. And she knows this in herself, but she wants to feel love. And so this is what we're working on, but it makes her feel uncomfortable. Totally understand that and valid in her path. Like I understand why it happened. So for her, a small thing, instead of being like, and I want you to give them like the biggest hug in the world and say, I love you. Like that might be really, really uncomfortable. But maybe for her, it is maybe you pat your significant other on the back, or like you gently hold his hand, or you say, how was your day today? Or like you do small little changes that like allow you to kind of tiptoe in states of discomfort, assess it, see how it feels, and then you can reflect and say, how did I handle that? How was I able to handle that? Sometimes it's going there like in the fearful place just a little bit to then assess and like realize that you can do it. And so like the next time maybe you go a little bit further and a little bit further. So being able to expose yourself to the things that you feel challenged by or uncomfortable with, slowly and surely you'll gain that confidence as you go and realize that it may not be as scary as you thought it was.
And that's where we've talked before about how like pushing ourselves in the gym and in our fitness and in our health and like things like that can end up bleeding over into a lot of that other stuff too. Is I think that no matter wherever you started, if it's the emotional side of things with that or with something else, like if you're opening yourself up to being more comfortable showing like love or taking down walls in that situation, then maybe once you've like kind of dipped your toes there and you feel better, now you do feel more comfortable to venture into the non-woman's room in the gym. Or like I've had clients who were terrified to leave like their little corner of like the mat and like where the tiny dumbbells, right? And they were not going to go where the big dumbbells and like more people were, but it was holding them back from like progress with stuff. And it came down to not wanting to have to make eye contact with people. And it's like, okay, well, what if we just talk to somebody at the gym, like a trainer and then said, hey, can you show me this stuff in that section? And now you kind of have like a field trip over there with like a trusted individual. And then you can go like more often and then eventually by yourself. And then the whole room becomes your oyster, like that kind of stuff. And so I think that no matter what it is, it's such an important skill because, I mean, you mentioned maybe you're somebody who's never experienced discomfort or who has never been challenged or something like that. But if you're that person and you're listening, my email is Christina@prophysique.com and I want to know more about your life because what? Like, I'd like to have you on the podcast if you identify as that human being. And so there usually is going to be one thing or another that we want to shift, right? If you're listening to this podcast, there's probably something that you're trying to work on and that you're looking to shift. And I, even as somebody who like does this stuff for a living and like coaches and has had many coaches and like all of that, there's still always something that is kind of at the edges of my zone where I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if that's for me. And it's nice to be nudged in that direction and find out more because then it makes me more comfortable in more situations to find out what else are my limits.
By
Steven,
the
you
way,
already.
how weird, because like we're both not neurotypicals, right? ADHD, maybe some other things going on there. It's like stuff that changes the way that we think and we act and that we behave because our brains work differently. And so when you're like, oh, they don't want to make eye contact with somebody, I was like, well, having a trainer over there doesn't actually help with me not having to make eye contact with somebody because I fucking hate making eye contact with people. It's like this weird, invasive, uncomfortable thing. And I hate it. But like, I've learned to mask so many of my natural things and tendencies to be socially acceptable,
Right.
which is funny because I'm still fucking off the rails.
Right.
Um,
That's right. Stephen and I can go down like such incredible tangents and like all of that. But I've thought about that we should talk about this more, Stephen, to a certain extent, because there's a lot of things that you and I do like routinely that we've made a part of our lives. And like even coming into like the masking or the discomfort things, just so that we can feel more normal with like more normal stuff. And so I mean, I think this can be really powerful, what you're about to say.
yeah, but so like the thing is though, like one of the uncomfortable things for me as an adult was to stop fucking masking with people. Or like not everybody, but with certain people. And to like be legitimately just dude, me and Jillian last night just started making weird noises. Like we just started making noises because it felt good and it made me happy. And I forget what it's called. Stimming, I think, right?
Vocal
Yeah.
stimming.
Yeah, we were just doing it. And it was like, yes. Because like that felt really nice. It feels nice to have somebody that you don't have to mask in front of. But like with us doing that throughout probably most of our lives and still continuing to do so, like I think what we probably will fail to realize for a lot of people is that we are so used to being uncomfortable because masking is this really uncomfortable thing. So we've literally lived these entire life of being uncomfortable or being in this challenged place of what's the difference between being who I am and feeling like I'm legitimately open about that, but also doing the right things to be socially acceptable enough. And so I think for people like us, we're automatically kind of we have a little bit more of a ward against that because we're already desensitized to it just in the day-to-day life.
It's almost like choosing the discomfort though, right? Like for me, I think to a certain extent, like the more I've learned about how my brain works and like all of that stuff is that it kind of makes sense to me that like why I am the kind of person who like seeks that stuff and like the pushing and the discomfort because then it gives me the control back about why I'm uncomfortable that day. And then it also gives me the confidence of being later on in the day like, oh well, I think this is uncomfortable, but remember when I was in that situation this morning and I was doing that thing that I thought it was hard then, I survived, I was fine. And so here I am now. And so that's where I think like, especially as coaches, it's probably funny for like people to have us in that situation because we we are a bit more comfortable exploring that place, and then maybe trying to help people who haven't had to like think that way or like put that stuff on, where like, because sometimes I think, you know, not saying everybody should be masking all the times or anything, but like sometimes when you are uncomfortable, maybe if you're somebody who doesn't naturally have that come to them, it can be nice to kind of put on, and I'll be curious what Danica has to say about this, but like that armor, you know, in like a situation. And I think especially if we go back to, like we've talked about alcohol and food surrounding the holidays and stuff, I think if you're in something where it's new, for you to protect those boundaries for you and for what you want done, or like Danica being there and being like, no, I just want to say no. Sometimes you might have to put on a little bit more of like a different side of yourself that is like, no, I'm going to stand up for this today. And it doesn't mean you have to be like forceful with it, but maybe it means you need to be a bit more honest about the why. Or maybe it's the other end of things and you don't need to explain yourself to somebody, and you need to put on the armor of, because I fucking said so and I just don't want it. And like being able to put that kind of stuff on, I think can be important. And that, again, if you don't put yourself in those situations, how are you going to learn how to better respond to it if we just avoid it at all costs?
I think having your, I guess you could call it armor, but I would even say like different jackets that you put on, like, and in different situations to allow you to gain experiences outside of your own personal comfort bubble, and being able to know that like anybody can have those, and anybody can know the situation that they're about to approach and look in their closet and be like, okay, what will help me to be able to have the best experience that I can have in this environment or situation that I'm about to go into? And what do I want to, what's my takeaway? Like, what do I want to gain from this experience too, right? So being able to kind of almost hype yourself up so that you can gain that confidence, knowing that, okay, I can be exposed to any situation and still have control over how I have that experience within that situation. And I know that for me, type 1 diabetes has helped me to be able to do that, because it wasn't, if I'm being completely honest, it's never fucking comfortable. Like, it's never comfortable when people are like, oh my God, do you want to go to an Italian restaurant? And I'm like, the fuck I do. Like, I don't necessarily want to go and mathematically think like, how is this going to work? And have everybody like chit-chatting and looking at the menu and gazing over, like, what are you gonna order? And I'm still deep into division. Like, I don't want to. So but I also know the coat that I need to put on that helps me feel more comfortable, that allows me to experience that without that like fear or anxiety, or like, I don't want people to see what's happening in my brain all the time, for me to navigate that a little bit better, right? But I've learned that, because it's something that's never going to go away, the same as what you both experience. It's not like you can be like, you know what, I'm going to side check this and like not have it be there. It's something that's always kind of present. And if you know that one thing in yourself, and maybe it's anxiety, like maybe it's social anxiety, or maybe it is agoraphobia, or maybe it is maybe it's your own self-confidence and the busy chatter that's going inside. You walk into situations feeling like all eyes are on you and they're just talking about you. So like every time you go to the gym, to the grocery store, like maybe it's that where you're just a little bit more paranoid, right? But to be able to know that thing about yourself that you know that you carry with you, and like maybe you improve it, maybe you rid of it, maybe it stays with you forever, but you're able to kind of armor or jacket, put that coat on to help you to navigate life, like to help you to experience life and to thrive in life, right? You don't want that thing to kind of hold you back from experiences. You kind of want it to be your, I think of my diabetes now as like my little sidekick. Like, it's walking with me, and it's not like being like, no, you may not go to the Italian restaurant. Like, you're sticking here. no, I'm going to go and it's going to be okay. And I'm going to have a great fucking time. So I love how you said that. And I think everybody should like be able to kind of think through their own thing. Like, what is their own thing that they still, whether it's like a concrete thing or something that like they're trying to improve on.
Do
Yeah.
you mean, oh, sorry, Stephen, go.
Oh, I was gonna say it's important for people to like recognize that I'm not gonna understand exactly where you're coming from. And so some things that work for me maybe won't work for you. Because
Yeah.
like me telling people to F off is really easy. That's like, oh, you told me to do something? Guess what is exactly the thing I'm not gonna fucking do right now. Right? Guess what? So
And that
and
might
that's
work for you.
no. That's apparently that's an ADHD trait, right? Is that like defiance, like, oh, I was gonna go do this, but since you told me to do it, go fuck yourself. Not happening now.
I
I even
actually
wanted to
wanted
do
to
it.
do that.
Yeah, see, she gets it. So,
Um,
so like it's important to understand that like because it might be really easy for me or Christina to say no and to really take a hard stance on that. If you're on the other end of that spectrum, you're like, yeah, but it's my family or it's this social group or it's these people and I really care about their opinions. And I feel like me telling them yes is a big thing and telling them no is the hard part. Like that's also, oh, it's okay to be where you're at.
100%. Yeah. And to know I would go with my clients. I always think that it's important to have them recognize like, well, play it out for me and how do you want to experience it? Like, what do you want to do? Outside opinions, like push them aside. What do you want to do? And what would you go after, right? What is it that you want to do? And then I would say, what is it that you feel you have to do for others? And then can we take this perspective, and then bridge, kind of close it in a little bit? And can we find a space where we're still feeling comfortable and in control? And we're feeling a little more comfortable too, because those people might be really important to you or whatever that may be, right? Like their opinions, their perspectives, or like the way that they're perceiving you, maybe that is of importance to you and you do give a fuck and you want to make sure that like you're not really hurting their feelings, whatever that may be. So trying to like walk the paths and then find out, okay, well, could we create a new path that works out really well still?
so in your situation that you mentioned with like if you're in a group who maybe doesn't know a whole lot about like your experience and stuff and they're wanting to just go and maybe they're like, hey, Danica, you want to go split one of those giant cinnamon rolls that's covered in a whole bunch of sugar and you're going to eat the entire half and everything's going to be great. And then now you're doing all this math with like, oh, fuck, like, and trying to figure it out. Do you lean towards if, say, it's somebody like newer and it's not family or like something like that, do you explain it? Or do you
Yeah.
feel more comfortable doing the math in your head and then deciding on your answer from there?
Yeah. I mean, well, it happened at I think it was our last coaches retreat, and everybody went out for, I don't know what it was, either the coaches retreat
It
or
was
maybe,
Denver, I think,
I think
because
it was,
I remember you and you looked uncomfortable, at least
yeah.
initially with it. And I was like,
Yeah, everybody wanted to
Whatever.
go get ice cream, which is fantastic. Like, absolutely. I also wanted to be part of the team. So like I was like, yeah, let's go do it. And then Danny said, um, well, would you get stuff for yourself? And I was like, my sugar's a little high right now, and I don't think so. Like, I'll pass. It's not that big of a deal. And then she started asking questions. I said, well, let's give an example. I'll take a few bites. I won't take any insulin, and I want you to watch my phone and see what happens after 2 bites. So like I took 2 bites and then we waited and she was like, oh shit, like I didn't realize that it impacts your body so much. And
Yeah.
it helped me to have that like educational piece so that it wasn't perceived as like, oh, there she is, just not eating anything, like eating the ice cream. Like it gave a different perspective and an educational moment that was almost invited to, so that they could see like firsthand what happens when I do that. And what would that mean in order for me to have those 2 bites? What would that mean? How would I calculate? And so sometimes I'll do that, but other times it does get like, other times I feel like it gets nauseating for me to talk about like, well, I would have to, my unit to insulin or my unit to carb ratio is this, my blood sugar is this right now. So then I would have to make sure that I enter in what it is right now. I'd wait 15 minutes until the arrow started to go down. And then I would make sure that I calculate, like, that's even exhausting. So like to explain it all sometimes, I
Not
feel like, well, it's, yeah, like not everybody is going to want to know or like care to know or have the capacity to listen fully to really understand. It makes me emotional because and I'm sure you guys can feel this way too. And I hate crying on podcasts. I appreciate when people care, when like they want to know and they want to take the time to understand it a little bit better because it's not just easily managed as the same as what you guys have experienced. You've learned through the difficulties of how to manage it, but that doesn't mean that like it's still super easy. Like it gets challenging. And so when people take the time to learn, then I'm like, oh my gosh, like thank you so much. Because sometimes it's nice to know that other people know. That's all. And now let's talk about something else. Give me an F-bomb to throw out.
right. Well,
Christina was going somewhere with that.
the reason I asked about that though is because I think that a lot of people, whether it's something with physical health or mental health or like whatever it is, I think it is so outrageously important. Or even if it's something as simple as you're in a fat loss phase or like something like that, to put the words to it and to put it out there or something, especially if you're going to be in a situation that's making you very uncomfortable, to have at least, and it might not even be an anchor who's in the room that you can like make eye contact with and have them know. It could be somebody who's like in your phone and that you can text like in the situation or something, but having somebody who understands where you're at, how you're feeling, and what the goals are for it. Because in the end, right, that comes back to like who we are as coaches and stuff. And like what I will tell my clients when I've had people check in even like this week where things have gotten a little off the rails. Maybe they're not exactly where they want to be. I hate being the coach that has to be like, hey, but you're the one fucking this up, right? Like I hate to do that. But at some point, having that person who like, I know their goal, I know the reason behind their goal, I know how important that goal is to them. I know they're beating themselves up. Like I had somebody check in where she was like, well, I'm fluffy and I hate everything and all of that. But her measurements don't say she's fluffy. She actually looked more cut in her pictures. The scale went up 2 pounds one day this week. And so I was like, that's probably what's pissing you off, right? Like, is that one number and you're letting it like eat you in your head. But you said you wanted to train for this giant thing and that was really important to you this year. And if we were to revert back to the comfort of eating less and the comfort of doing more and doing all of that, you're going to be madder at yourself for that if I like signed off on going that path. And so it's having somebody, whether it's related to that or it's like for me, my social anxiety over the years has gotten like way worse and I hate going into situations, but having my husband, right, like I just cannot tolerate it. And it's gotten to the point, I mean, shit, even last night, like being at the grocery store 2 days before Thanksgiving, I was like, I'd rather go get run over in the parking lot than spend more time in this aisle. Like I was so over it. But, my husband knows that stuff. He knows how I get when I feel that way. And for the longest time, I wouldn't say anything. And I would just slowly get pissier and pissier. And like, I'm like, oh, is it hot in here? And like stuff like that. And because I felt like a weirdo, but like now being able to, like, he completely like I've broken it down and like we've talked about things, we can look at each other and he knows if I'm feeling that way. And if I'm like, I'm going to go disappear for 5 minutes and like try to get myself normal again. In any of those situations, I think having somebody who gets it, like having somebody, if you've explained yourself and then you're able to have somebody else who's hanging around where if they're like, no, definitely, there's like the random, who's like, Danica, just eat the cookie. It's not a big deal. Just eat the cookie. And if someone else is like, yo, she doesn't want the fucking cookie, like, and having like your like wingman that either stands up for you or like helps give you that power, I think is so important. And like, it's part of the discomfort because it's not fun to explain some of these things. It's not fun to open yourself up and like put out there like, hey, this is what I have to go through to have a snack, or like this is what I have to go through to stand in a room while people drink or something, because now you like maybe they feel weird or they feel different and stuff. But I think if we had better communication between people, how many things in this world would be better if we all were just like a little bit more comfortable being a hint vulnerable and communicating that situation.
Yeah, but I mean that goes back to the whole like discomfort comfort thing, because when you're honest with your communication, oftentimes you are going to be vulnerable, which is very, very uncomfortable, especially with people who you don't know whether or not they are going to,
Exactly.
handle that well. Are they going to take good responsibility with your vulnerability and make sure that, they're not exploiting that or making you feel bad about it? And are they going to make you feel safe with that and heard and understood? And so for me, I ain't going to be vulnerable with anybody that it hasn't been around for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, no, no, no. My honesty is something that's earned, right? I don't just give trust to everybody. Um, I need to understand that you have like some sense of morals, some sense of principles that like align with mine well enough to where I feel like I can do that. But then there's other things where I don't get a choice about it, right? It's like I'm at a new jujitsu gym. I've had a couple surgeries over the past 2 years. And guess what? Like I had to take a break with somebody because they were hipping into my stomach. Yeah, my stomach's wrapped around itself. I just had surgery on that, what, 4 or 5 months ago. So does it suck? Yeah, it does suck. Is it embarrassing for me? Yeah. But would it be worse for me to, possibly re-injure myself or undo the surgery? Oh, yeah, definitely. So that one is like, I have to. But there's a lot, I don't have to tell any of them that I hate making eye contact with them because it makes me feel like they're scratching the inside of my soul, right? Like, nope, I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to tell them, that I'm sure they realize that I just sit on the mat and zone out sometimes and not fucking know what's going on. Like, so, but I don't have to have those conversations with them until, I've been comfortable. But like going to a new gym has been crazy uncomfortable for me because they're much more competition focused as well. And literally the guy that runs it is Marcio Cruz, who's like a world champion. He's like won MMA titles and IBJJF. Like the dude's crazy good. Um, and so going into a bunch of people I don't know when I already don't like meeting new people and putting myself in these situations was uncomfortable and difficult. But it's either that or I give up something I really enjoy doing. And then on top of that, I've had almost zero decent training in the past 2 years. It's all been crap. So I'm nowhere near as good. I don't trust my body the same. So now it's like, okay, well, I'm coming in as a purple belt, but I damn sure ain't rolling like it still yet because I'm so deconditioned and out of it and have a lot of work to do to get back to it. So now it's like, oh, well, they're all going to judge me. You know what I mean? Like the truth of the matter is most of them have been cool as shit. They've been awesome. Most of them have been like, hey, make sure, we don't want to get you rehurt. Like, just make sure you're telling everybody it's not a big deal. We're happy to work around it, you know? Um, but like shit, dude, if I let and I'll still have those moments where somebody says something and I'll think about it for like hours or days. And I'm like, oh man. And then I see them the next time and they've forgotten about it. They didn't mean anything by it, but I made a big deal out of it in my own head, you know? And it's like, okay, well, again, I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet those new people who have been really awesome. Um, and like set up a new possible support system in terms of at least jujitsu if I hadn't put myself out there. And that's one of those things that makes a hugely positive difference in my life that I wouldn't have known about 7 years ago because I wasn't doing it. Because
Mhm.
I wanted to forever, and I just never made the choice to do it. And my first gym was fucking awesome too, filled with a bunch of great people that I made really good friends with. And like it was just this hugely positive experience in my life. And again, it was one of those things I thought about it and I thought about it for probably almost a decade before I ever actually stepped foot in to do it.
Yeah. The being able to be vulnerable is very challenging for many people. It's probably one of so the question that I have on my mindset intake form, I obviously ask like what are the challenges you're experiencing, but then I'll say who who is aware of these challenges and who have you talked to with these challenges. And a lot of people say no one. Like it's just kind of a thing that they're trying to kind of navigate themselves and feeling a little defeated as they go or alone as they go. And having people that I think it is important to read people well, like how you were saying, Stephen, like just to kind of gauge, like, you got to kind of earn my trust. And like, are these people somebody that I could like talk to or express something to, and they're gonna be able to have the emotional like intellect to have like a back and forth conversation and take what I'm saying and not like drive it somewhere else. But having people in your corner too is really, really important because it allows you to not feel alone. And education is such a big part. And sometimes that's just a hard conversation. I have my family is very obviously very supportive. My mom being like the biggest supporter with type 1 diabetes because she's been there through the whole thing.
Right.
But my mother-in-law has yet to have like a full-on conversation with me about it. And there's been instances like we had a birthday party and she said, "Oh, you're not just gonna have a cupcake." And without skipping a beat, my mom said, "Well, diabetes didn't take off today." And I was like, "Oh, you didn't even have to say
Right.
anything." Like she was like right at it. And I appreciated that because I was like, okay, she sees me. Like
Right.
she sees me, she feels me, she knows like I can probably navigate it on my own, but just having like a I got you, like feels really good. And coaches obviously can do that too. So that is something where in my with my mindset coaching, especially and with my other clients, obviously, but I will say, if I'm presenting a challenge to you and this is the mindset task that I want you to go forward with, when you're in those experiences, I want you to reach out. Like, I want you to know, like, I'm here to help you navigate the uncomfortable situation. And we can do this together. Like, you're not alone in this, even though, like, I might be a country away. Like, you're not alone, and we're going to do this together. And coaches can be that for their clients as well.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at how many of my clients have worked with me and then realized and then gone to the doctor and then received their own ADHD diagnosis.
Right. I
Like,
mean,
oh, that sounds
yeah.
familiar.
Right. I was just talking to a client about that yesterday, actually, who just found out her own stuff. And I mean, it's so scary, but I think for me at least, and maybe this goes back to just that, like Steven said, we're better if we get pushed to a certain point at being like, okay, well, now I'll be really honest with you. Where I would say 9 times out of 10, that has become far more comfortable for me than trying to navigate not being totally honest because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
almost more of a bitch, which is like the same reason I don't bother like lying with stuff. I don't, there's too many tabs open. I can't keep that straight. And so I might as well just err on the easy thing, which is being honest or telling the truth and stuff, because it is what's happening. So like, let's just fucking run with it. And there's something, I mean, that itself is stressful because I spend plenty of time. Oh my God, like literally our last podcast, today's Wednesday, it hasn't even gone out yet. And that's been like the only thing I've thought about. Or like conversations will do the same thing where like I will analyze every possible breath somebody took during the conversation with, were they mad at me? And like the whole time. But it's still more comfortable to just be who I am and do the things that I want to do and like and then work towards those as long as I'm continuing to find those new limits. That's kind of like how I wrap my head around it where I'm like, okay, well maybe I don't like even on I mean we talked a little bit Danica about like how I have shifted away. I'm pretty sure now, like completely from bodybuilding, like just not my jam. I thought I was going to get back into it for like a minute. And then literally talking to Steven was like, should I? And then all I needed was one fuck no. And I was like, you're so right. Oh my God. Thank you. And like and comfort closing a door, right? But even like in especially what we do, being on this podcast, being a member of this team, all of that kind of stuff. That was a scary thing for me to even like say out loud or like emotionally commit to, that just does not fucking call to me. Do I like to train that way? Do I like to look like, I'm like I train that way?
You
Yeah.
like to look like you're in shape? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I have zero patience or room in my life to worry anymore about whether or not I am shaping up to somebody else's standard, no matter what that standard is. If it's the way that my body is, if it's the way I act, if it's the way I think, whatever, I don't give a fuck. As long as I'm happy with who I am and the people I love enjoy me, then like I'm doing something pretty okay. But that took 37 years and a lot of bad decisions and a lot of trying to figure that kind of stuff out and fit into different molds that felt uncomfortable to find what does feel okay. What is a discomfort that I'm okay pursuing? And how does that add to my life, right? Like if we're just choosing something to be masochistic for the sake of it, well, like that's something else like to dive down into, right? Like if I got to a point where I, could not get through my day without going for a run every single morning, and if anybody ruins it, like now my thing has become something that's not healthy anymore, and then that's probably not serving me. But and then because I've been down other paths that have gone there, and like my husband has seen that kind of stuff, he can easily be like, yo, you're getting weird, and like try to figure that stuff out. But it all comes from building that repertoire and from wanting to seek out resiliency, I think. Like the people that I work with who don't get to where they want to be and who don't find the results that they want, 100% are the people who say, well, I've done this before and it's worked every time. Why do I have to do something different? Or how long
Then
is
why are we
that?
talking now?
Huh?
If it worked every time, why are we talking now?
I mean, that's what I'll say. Why are you trying to hire me then, right? If you already know what to do. But it's like it's having, like Danica mentioned, the walls that are ineffective or that aren't helping us, right? It's okay to have boundaries and it's okay to have things that are just not your jam, that you don't need in your life. But I think it's also important to make sure that you're kind of like testing the holes in those walls and see if we need to alter things, to rewrite the boundaries.
Mhm.
And to do this, to let go of this comfort, to let go of the thing. Because I think even sometimes people will be okay with being uncomfortable, but they won't be okay letting go of this one comfortable thing that they feel like benefits them or does them good. And like, dude, great example here. It used to be, I used to pick terrible women to date, right? Not open for any kind of commitment, not ready for anything, blah, 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 whatever. Um, just go down the list. Try to move in after 2 weeks, whatever. And it's like it was comfortable for me because it was what I was used to, but it was so uncomfortable being used to it all the time. I had to let go of that idea of that comfort was familiarity and understand that comfort and something being familiar are two very different things.
It's like a known evil,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I was
Still,
choosing my discomfort, you
right,
know?
right.
Yeah. Yeah. With walls, I try to have my clients do like what if instead of like this fortress that you built with like solid walls of concrete, what if you just lived in a bouncy house? Like things can still bounce off of you. There's still an entrance and an exit, like, and you can just have things bounce off of you if needed. And it doesn't have to be something that's so solid where brick by brick you have to like take it off. But I do think that tough conversations are an area that many would probably see progress or benefit from, like having conversations that make you feel uncomfortable, because those conversations usually bring about and may not, but it usually brings about insight, right? Either like you realize that the person you're conversating with isn't worthy in your life, right? Or you're able to have good conversations and release some things that like may have been feeling stuck, or there's an educational component that could come from it, being like vulnerable in those conversations. My husband always says, and I sometimes feel uncomfortable saying that he's right. So I'll say that he's right now to be able to go through that discomfort. But with Jordan Peterson, he's like, Jordan Peterson says, like, talk about the tough stuff, like, talk about the things that are small that might be challenging you or bothering you, because it will all add up, or it will hold you back from truly living the life that you want to live. So talk about the stuff that's bothering you, the challenging pieces, explore that a little bit, venture into it, tiptoe, whatever you have to do. Don't like completely immerse yourself immediately unless that's your jam, then like go for it. But talk about the stuff that bothers you or the things that are challenging you and expose yourself to those fearful, uncomfortable places so that you can see the opportunities that might be existing behind them.
I dig it.
I'm out. That's it. That's all I got.
Thanks so much. I'm so much better at like throwing F-bombs than crying. Like,
Mm, no, I don't know that that's the word I would use to describe those situations.
Right, right. Now I'm curious. What do you mean? Like because it's more fun, obviously. F-bombs.
yeah, like on this podcast so far, I think I've been on 5 episodes. Danica has said a lot of F-bombs and now she's crying. So
I
it's
mean, it happens, right?
it happens. It happens.
I-
Hopefully you are both like, I think we're ready to accept this tearful face.
I'm not good with it. I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this situation. I'm like,
This is
oh
uncomfortable.
yes, a nice pat on the back makes it all a wee bit better, don't it?
Thank God for Zoom meetings, right? Because then we can be that way. We can be uncomfortable. I mean, like hiding under my hat or crying or dropping F-bombs, whatever it is. Because like Danica said, we don't have to leave our house. Like,
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
right. Oh man. Well, I feel like that was a wonderful loop-de-loop, tangent-filled
And we
conversation.
didn't say shit about the holidays.
I mean, really, like it's not any different than any other time of year. It's just one meal, right? Like it's just one day. You guys can get through it. Don't go crazy. Like, I mean, they're going to hear this after and it'll be leading into Christmas, but the thing that I've been telling all of my clients about this season and parties or the day of the holiday, whatever it is enjoy it in whatever way is going to have you go to bed that night feeling good about the day. And I gave one client the example where I was like, if that means like you only like to eat pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving, and so you ate an entire pumpkin pie and that
Ew.
you're like, I loved my pumpkin pie today. And like you feel good about it. Cool. That was the best decision for you today. And I'm supportive of it. But just do not go to bed that night being like, I'm disgusting. Why did I make those decisions? Just make ones that make you feel good, no matter what they were. And then everyone got quiet on me.
Yeah,
End
I think
podcast.
don't overthink it. Like just don't overthink it. I tell people to lean into the areas that like you aren't going to get opportunity to have, right? So if that's like conversations with family, because let's be honest, like if you really break down how many times a year you see certain people, it's not that many. So if you can put in a little bit more energy, like I have my clients say like I'd like to have one, I haven't seen this person, I'd like to have one conversation with them. I'm like, fantastic, that sounds great. Like how you want to experience it, map it out. Planning ahead is a beautiful thing. And also don't put too much like energy into it. Like keep with your same schedule. One person said, should I work out on Thanksgiving? I'm like, do you usually work out on a Thursday? Like, is that usually what you do? Do you usually wake up and drink some water? Like, wake up and drink some water, go to the bathroom, like do your own thing, like continue course. It's going to be okay. The only difference is that you get to celebrate with people. And what an amazing opportunity is that, that you have the ability to celebrate with other people. Like, take advantage of that and don't overthink it or overcomplicate it so much so that it's stressing you the F out and you lose sight of what you're actually getting to do.
Yeah, I wish that I got to stay home away from my family more often.
Well, you get that often.
And I do. And actually, working out is a great excuse to take a little break if you feel the same way about your family. It's like, oh, you know what? I gotta go get a workout in. Yeah, my trainer's just a bastard. Like he said, it's really important that I get it in. And hey, guess what? Now you just got an hour away. You got a little breaky break right in the middle. And I'm on the other end. Don't eat a whole pumpkin pie. That's terrible. That's terrible. It's not even taste good.
And so it's something else I've said to people is the first two bites do taste like the 27th bite and the 30th bite. Unless that's your thing and you really want to make it to 40 bites, then do that. Like if like deeply inside you want to do that, then more power to you. But that's something I remind my clients of because they're like, but I have to have 5 portions. I'm like, okay, if you feel like you have to, then we can go there. But I'm pretty sure the first taste is going to taste like the next taste and the next taste and the next taste and the next
Oh
taste.
no, they go in
No, no,
order.
no. That's not what happens though. What happens is
They
that
all
first
taste
taste is
different.
like no, that first bite is like life changing. It's like,
Uh-huh.
oh my God, it's so good.
Mhm.
And then the second bite is like, oh yeah, it's still really good. And then the third bite, then the third and the fourth is like when it starts kind of just becoming the same that's been there. That's
Okay.
when I'm like, that should be the cutoff point. Y'all have prepped.
Yeah,
Y'all
yeah.
know how it is. When you get that first bite of something, you're like, life has
Okay, so
changed.
maybe like the third bite tastes
Yeah.
like
That's when
Yeah.
it starts
Yes.
decreasing marginal utility. First bite is, oh my God, I love this. Second bite, confirmation that you love it.
yes.
Third and fourth bite, we're just finishing it. And so if they're not as good as like 1 and 2, meh. That's why I like to share things because
It,
I'm
it's
normally going to get, 1 or 2. And then if I want to try something different, then I'll share that with somebody and then
it's
see.
the pursuit of happiness, right? Like you're like hoping that bites 3 through 42 are gonna somehow bring you back to bites 1.
Right? The first surprising bite and the confirmation bite. See?
I
Damn
love
it. Now we said something about the holidays.
it. There we did. Have
Box
a
checked.
happy holiday.
So, all right, guys. Well, you know where to find us. Our names at prophysique.com. Oh gosh, this is going to come out after the big move of all of our social media pages. But if I'm being honest, I don't remember how to help you guys navigate that. So I'm going to put it in the
I think
YouTube.
it's Pro Physique Coaching
I think so too.
on Instagram.
So basically, what's happening is that the challenge is going to have its own, I believe, and then everything else Pro Physique is getting wrapped up into one page. And so it won't be like the code and like lifestyle and competitor and like all of that kind of stuff. It's going to be a little bit more of a one-stop shop with the goal of helping everybody understand a little bit more about all of the fantastic coaches we have that maybe don't get seen as much or like things like that like aren't as visible. We want to make sure that everybody is and that everybody gets that opportunity. And then also one of our lovely coaches, Sarah, who was on here not that long ago, right? Like a month or 2 ago, Sarah was on an episode. So she runs our social media and is helping to come up with like all of these ideas. And if you message any of those pages with any topics or any questions or anything, that's who you're talking to for the most part. And she sends it our way. So if you ever have any topic ideas or things you want to see more out of us, let us know and we pass it along. And don't stress out this holiday season and let expectations of you or from other people or from within yourself crush your holiday season because you deserve to have this be joyful for you too. And if your idea of joy is not doing all of the things that other people want to do, then just don't and tell them Christina said fuck off. Okay. So yeah. Danica, is that better? I'm trying to outdo you. I'm gonna outpace you. And someone's bound to count and let us know how many I dropped. So
That was good. I think you outdid me this time.
I win. All right, friends, we will talk to you soon.